talk about tonight. A lot of things that some are fascinating, some interesting, some very strange. Eila toldos Noach. These are the generations. These are the children of Noach. Noach ish tzaddik. Noach was a man, a tzaddik. Tamim hoyo b'darosov. He was pure. He was whole. Es Elokim his halik Noach. Noach walked with Hashem. So first of all, the Chasam Sofer says that Noach Nun Chet is Gematria 58. That Noach lived so long that for the last 58 years of his life, he overlapped Avraham Avinu. So it seems that Noach knew Avraham, even though they were 10 generations apart. And those were like some of the best years of Noach's life. Even though it was towards the end, and Noach was a very old man, Noach spent time with Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu spent time with Noach. So they seem to have had an overlap. Fascinating.
They learned Torah together, no?
Yeah, they had a fascinating thing. The Medrashim say that Noach had children very late in life. That means most people were having children when they were 40, 50, 60. Noach didn't have children until he was hundreds of years old. So you would think that someone like Noach would say, I'm a tzaddik, I'm a good person. Look, of all the people in the world, Hashem saved me, and I don't have children. How does that happen? But the truth is, it was a tremendous chesed, because since he had children so late, his children stayed home. They weren't caught up in the community, and therefore they didn't die in the flood. And they didn't have grandchildren, so the grandchildren didn't. And it says Noach only had sons, he didn't have daughters. But Lot had married daughters. So when they left Sodom, the husbands of the married daughters said no, they died in Sodom. Lot lost children in Sodom. When Sodom was destroyed, Lot lost family. Noach didn't have any of that. He had no daughters. He had 3 sons. The sons were married, newly married. They didn't have children. So it was all together. He was able to put them all on the table, all on the ark, and they were able to go. So it was an interesting chesed. The Meforshim say, these are the children of Noach, and it lists them. Shem, Chom, v'Yafet. Very simple. Noach had 3 kids, end the story. Avraham doesn't say that. It doesn't say Avraham had how many children. Because Avraham had thousands of children. He had students. And a Rebbe, who teaches someone Torah, as if he gave birth. So when it says, these are the children of Noach, it's sad that you could actually count the children of Noach. Shem, Cham, Yafet, that's it. End of story. By Avraham, there were thousands. Now, the Kloisenberger Rebbe, he asked a fascinating question. He says, okay, I get it. Noach tried to save the world, he was not successful. How many people did Noach save? The answer is no one. Really, almost nobody. Imagine you have a yeshiva like Shar Yoshuv, about Tshuva Yeshiva, you walk in, it's empty. So if you have a yeshiva that's empty, you don't have a yeshiva. You have an empty building. So they ask, why Avraham was so successful and Noach was not? The short answer is, Noach was very much an Ashkenazi, and Avraham was Bukhari. That's the real answer. What do I mean? I'll explain it to you very simple. It says, Es Elokim hisalek Noach. Noach walked with Hashem. Everywhere Noach went, he was always worried. What does God think? What is God saying? What does God want? And people couldn't relate to that, because Noach was very tough. Religion was very tough by him, was very strict. By Avram had a different approach. Avram didn't preach religion. Avram threw parties. Every other day was a yard site. He had food, he had vodka, he had water, right? Eishel, achila shtiya lina. If you got so drunk that you couldn't get home, he said, no problem, I have a hotel, I have a bed, I'll give you a room to stay. So Avram threw a party. Who doesn't go to a party? Everybody goes to a party. So people came. So then Avram would say, well, let's thank the sponsors. So, okay, Avram, Sarah, Lot, whoever, he says, yeah, but where did the food come from? Well, the bread, it comes from wheat. Wheat grows from the ground. Yeah, but why does the ground grow? Well, it gets water. Where does the water go? That means, while they were sitting around the table, and while they were eating and drinking his food, he talked to them. He explained it to them. That's the way you do it. That's the Bukharian way, right? He's put out a spread. The Ashkenazim want you to come with no food. That doesn't work very well. But Avram must have been Muchayim. That's what they said. Okay? So I found that to be very, very interesting. Now, let's go a little further. There is a quote. Let me tell you this quote. I'll read it to you. And it says as follows. Most people live the life that happens instead of the life they really want. Okay, now I'll explain to you what that means. Let's try it again. Most of us have a fantasy of what kind of a life we would like. Most of the time that fantasy involves winning the lottery and having millions of dollars in the bank. Then you can buy the car of your dreams, and you can buy the house of your dreams, and you can go on vacations, and you can give tzedakah, and you can be a philanthropist, and you can travel the world. That's the life we think we really want. But that's not the life we live. What's the life we live? We live the life that happens to us. Reality. You know, we are born to a certain family. We have no control over that. Our brothers and sisters, we have no control over. We get married, and we make the best we can do with the person we choose to marry. Maybe at the time we thought that person was the best person for us, and over time, maybe we're not so sure anymore. But that's our life. We do the best we can. So it takes a certain level of understanding to be able to make the best. And I just heard a shir, and we spoke about this last year, how people get depressed today more than ever before, and how people have unfulfilled goals. Let's take, for example, Noach. Noach lived his life. Okay. The Gemara says there were 5, 6 people who saw 3 worlds. The completed world, a destroyed world, and a recompleted world. Noach was one of them. He had a world, and now the world was going to be destroyed. Did he have a choice? No. He had to live that life. When the world was destroyed, he came out of the ark, and now he had to start over. It didn't work so well. First of all, he wanted to bring korbanot. He could not bring the korbanot because he was late feeding the lion, so the lion wounded him. So he was a balmum. He had a blemish. So Shem took over. Shem became the Kohen Gadol. We know that Avraham meets Malki Tzedek, Melech Shalem, Kohen Gadol. That was Shem ben Noach. Then after that, he goes through the flood. He says, "I could use a drink." I guess I can understand that. Anybody who goes through the flood probably could use a good drink. And he plants a vineyard, and we don't hear anything more about him. The Medrash compares him to Moshe. Moshe started out, he was an Egyptian, and he ended up an Ish Elokim, a man of God. Noach started off walking with God, and he ended up a farmer, Ish Adama. So, Moshe went from here up, and Noach went from up down, just the opposite. Other people saw worlds like that. Eov had a beautiful life. His life was destroyed, and then he rebuilt his life. Moshe had a beautiful life growing up in the palace of Paro. He was on his run for his life, and he ended up with a beautiful life. Mordechai had the Beis HaMikdash. The Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, and then he went back and had the second Beis HaMikdash. So there were people who had these experiences of seeing completed worlds, destroyed worlds, and Yosef had a beautiful life. The first 17 years, his father left him. He was popular. He ended up spending 12 years in jail, rock bottom. Then he rebuilt his life. So there are many people, and the Holocaust we won't even go into, there are many people who had a good life, who lived their life, who had their lives destroyed, for better or for worse, and eventually had the choice to rebuild their lives, and they did. So now, he brings down a story from one of the New York Times best-selling authors, John Maxwell. I don't know who John Maxwell is. I don't know what it means. He's one of the best-selling authors. But he brings down a fascinating observation. Let me tell you what he says. He says that every year there was a group of people who went to Switzerland to climb some of the highest mountains. You know, if you ever gone to, I've been to Switzerland. And in Switzerland, you have the mountains called the Alps. Right? The Alps. You know, it's nice. It's beautiful. I was in St. Moritz, you know, I took my wife. It was very, very nice. The truth is, I was not so impressed because I grew up in Denver, Colorado. So I had mountains in my backyard. I could go out my front door. What?
Great Canyon.
The Grand Canyon and all these things. I had beautiful mountains, you know, I could see them. Bertha Pass, Loveland Pass, some of these mountains, Vale, Aspen. But, you know, Switzerland is Switzerland. Mountains are mountains, but they were different. He says every year there's a group of about 30, 40 people who gather and they hire guides to climb the mountains. So he says he went with these groups. He wanted to observe them. So they start climbing. By about 1:30, 2 o'clock, they start early, 6 a.m. in the morning. By about 1:32, they're about halfway up the mountain. And they take a break. There's an inn. There's a lodge. And they go into this lodge. And it's a beautiful lodge. There's a beautiful fire in the fireplace. And they take off their climbing. They're wearing boots and coats and scarves and 3 different coats and gloves. And they get a hot meal, they get a nice lunch, and they're by the fireplace, and they drink some whiskey, some vodka, and they're relaxing. About an hour and a half later, the guide says, "Okay, guys, suit up. We gotta go the rest of the way. It's 3 o'clock. We gotta get up there before nightfall to make camp." He says, every time, half the people don't continue up. They just like it where they are. So when the guide says, "Okay, let's go," 15, 20 people suit up to go, and the other 15 or 20 people say, "You know what? We made it halfway.
It's enough.
It's enough. We had our experience. Enjoy yourself," and they go back to the fire, and they go to their cup of coffee or their hot cocoa. Okay. And they're happy, they're laughing, they're having a great time. By about 5:36, they look out the windows and they see all the way to the top of the mountain these tents going up for those 15, 20 people that went. This author says the entire mood in the room changed. All of a sudden everybody's quiet. They're staring out the window, they're looking, the laughing stops, the fun stops. People go to sleep. And the next day, when the people on the top of the mountain come back down, and they're so excited, you should know, it was so great up there, the view, and these other 50 people are just quiet, and they just leave. When he interviewed them, he asked them, "What happened?" He says, "You know what happened? We realized that we didn't live our dream. Why did we come to Switzerland? We came to climb to the top of the mountain. But after we made it halfway, we got sucked in to the coffee, to the hot cocoa, to the fire. We were tired. We gave up." 15 people continued on, and now they lived their dream. Even though it was our choice, he says, because they knew they made a big mistake. They gave up a dream and a goal for a little bit of comfort. And now they felt bad. And of course, that's it. The tour was over, and they would have to come back next year and maybe try again. He says, Avraham Avinu, with his family, Terach, they all leave Ur Kasdim. They're going to go to Eretz Canaan. They stop in Choron, midway. What does Terach say? Terach says, I made it so far. It's enough. I'm going to end up here. Avram, the family, continue on to Eretz Canaan, Eretz Yisrael. Terach dies. Where does he die? In Choron. That means he had a dream. He had a goal. He never made it. Noach had a dream. What was his goal? I'm going to walk with God. For 120 years, he builds the ark. He goes into the ark. He survives the ark. Okay? He lived the dream. Now what? The dream became a nightmare. He says there are many people who have good dreams, good hopes, good plans, good aspirations, and somehow it gets knocked off the track. Somehow they get sidetracked, and they go through life living, as he says, the life that happens and not the life they want. They never really live the dream. They never really enjoy the dream they want. In America a few years ago, they had something called the bucket list. Bucket list, because in the saying, when you die, you kick the bucket. So before you kick the bucket, people made a list of the things I want to do. I want to jump out of an airplane. I want to go to Nepal. I want to go to Hawaii. They made a list. And I want to go on a cruise. People made a list of things they wanted to do. And every time they did it, they put a check mark. I used to do that. I used to write all the different Gemaras of Shas. And as I finished it, I used to pull out my list. I used to put a check mark next to it. We all have our dreams. We all live things. And as I was seeing the paper fill up, I was doing the 14 books of the Rambam. As I finished each book, I put a check mark next to it. I used to keep lists. If I did Mishnayos, I used to have a list of all the Mishnayos. I used to put a check mark. I did Yerushalmi, I did the same thing. So, we all have dreams. How you live your dreams depends on you. It depends on the caliber of a person that you are. But it's interesting. He says, Jews, not Jews, it makes no difference. It's amazing how you're on track, and then something happens and it just knocks you off. And the idea is to get back on track, to get back on that go. There's a whole debate over here. Noach was really great in his generation. What happens if he would have lived in the generation of Avraham Avinu? Some people say he would have been greater. Other people say he would not have been noticed at all. So the Alta from Navarda, he had an interesting observation. He says, when Noach saw how bad the people were of his generation, you know what he said? I want nothing to do with them. He isolated himself. So he was a tzaddik because he had nothing to do with them. Had he lived in the days of Avraham, you know what would have happened? He would have gone to Oner, Eshkol, Mamre, some of Avraham's friends, and he would have walked away saying, hey, they're nice guys. They're moral, they're ethical, they're good people. I can be friends with them. He would have been friends with them. He would not have isolated himself. He would not have worked on himself. He would have said they're good people. So sometimes when a person is in a horrible environment, they shine because they know that's a bad influence. Sometimes when they're in an environment that's parv, not good or bad, they say, no, that's good enough for me. They become mediocre. And when a person becomes mediocre, they don't shine, they don't grow. And that's what happened with Noach a little bit. That's the fear. The fear was that Noach would not grow. It says over here that Hashem saw that the sin ki rabohi was very great. So they bring down over here, Rabba means not that the sin was great, but that their addiction to the sin was great. That means there are things that people do that are okay, but if you do it in excess, anything is not good. Rain is a good thing, but if it rains and never stops, it's not a good thing. Warming up by a fire is great until it burns down your house, then it's not so great anymore. He says, and he brings this down from Matisyahu Solomon, he says that in the days of the Mabul, what happened was people didn't know limitations. They just didn't know that things have to be in proportion. It's nice to have ice cream, but you can't have a ton of ice cream. It's nice to have cake, but you can't eat cake your whole life. Everything, there's good and bad, and you have to know the mix. You have to know the balance. And when people lose balance, it's a big problem. Now, Noach and Naamah. Noach's wife was Naamah. What does Noach mean? Noach means to rest. Well, why was he called Noach? Because people were working very hard. Remember, the ground was cursed. You could work the ground and it didn't produce. The ground was cursed. Noach came and he invented farm tools. The plow, a shovel. He made farming a little bit easier.
When the finger was together, does that?
Yes.
When Noach time is open up.
Open up. So he made things a little bit better, a little bit easier. So people called him Noach. Noach, you brought peace to the world. You brought rest to the world. He was an inventor, like Thomas Edison. He was an inventor. Naamo, the name Naamo means pleasant. Naomi means pleasant. She was pleasant. It's interesting. It's interesting. Pleasant means nice. People liked her. People could identify with her. You know, because it's interesting. Hashem decided that the world was a mistake. That's really what it comes out to be. Hashem says at that time, he says the world has to be destroyed. And there were good people in the world. There was Mesushelach. Mesushelach was a big tzaddik. So he died. And they had Shiva for him. And after the 7 days, the Mabul came. So it wasn't that Mesushelach lived during the Mabul that was put on the ark. Not at all. There were good people in that time, but there were a lot of bad people. So Hashem realizes the world has to be destroyed. Why was Noach saved? Was it because he was a tzaddik? No, that's not what the Torah says. V'Noach motza chen be'enei Hashem. Noach was pleasant in the eyes of Hashem. It wasn't because he davened the beautiful Shemona Esrei. It wasn't because he wore talis and tefillin. It wasn't because he kept kosher. There was something about him that was just nice, pleasant. People enjoyed being around him. People enjoyed his company. Now that's an interesting observation. You know, think about the people you know, the friends you know. How many of them? What?
He has a simple derech eretz.
Derech eretz. How many people do you know that you enjoy being around, that they're fun, and you like them, and you enjoy their company? Not many. Most of us don't really enjoy the people we hang out with. We hang out with them because they're part of our circle. But, you know, you talk about derech eretz. This, today in the world, derech eretz is really out the window. I mean, kids today are so chutzpahdik. You know, you can't even begin to imagine. I was walking home Friday night with a couple telling me that the way the kids talk to them, they're thinking back, they would never talk that way to their parents. You know, if they did, their father probably would have smacked them half across the room. But they would never talk that way to their parents. And their kids don't hesitate to talk that way. So, you know, and the teachers tell me this all the time. So, you know, it's really gotten very, very bad.
How do the teachers survive?
Not well. Teacher burnout is tremendous, and children burnout. Many high school children today are depressed. We talk about depression. I'm going to talk about it next week a little bit. Many kids today are depressed. They're on all different types of antidepressants and medications. You know, we live in a wonderful world, and yet everybody's sad and everybody's unhappy, and you know,
they have
no communication.
You didn't have people bringing 45 guns to a hotel room in Vegas and shooting 58 people dead. They didn't have that 50 years ago. You know, the worst thing could happen 50 years ago was someone was chewing gum in class, and the teacher had to send them to the principal for chewing gum. You know, it wasn't that people brought knives.
What the scientists said? Why did the discount? What happened? Huh?
I don't know. They don't know. They don't know the motive. They don't know. Something to do with the air. Something to do with the water. Something with the environment.
Technology killing people.
I don't know. Now they asked the question. It's an interesting question. Noach had children. Shem was a very good kid. Even Yefes, towards the end, showed his true colors. Ham, you know, he did horrible things. You know, especially when Noach was drunk. So where did Ham come from? So they say there's a pasuk in Bereshis, Va'achos Tuval Kayin Naamo. Naamo had a brother. The brother's name was Tuval Kayin. Tuval means spice. He was the spice of Kayin. Kayin committed the first murder. Tuval created weapons, war weapons. And he would go around saying to people, my father, my great-grandfather, Cain, killed one person. I have weapons here that can kill 100 people. He was the spice of death. Tuval Cain. And he says, Ham had his character, and that's why he did it.
Nimrod come out from the Ham. Nimrod.
Nimrod eventually came from Ham, yes. So it came from that line. Tuval Cain, eventually he had a sister, Nama, and Ham had that Midah. So, sometimes yeah. So we can trace a lot of those things to these people. We can trace a lot of these things to these people, where the family comes from and the influence that are out there. So we see that happening. Okay, last week I told you something that I was going to share with you this week. Let's get to it. The Rambam, Hilchos Brachos. Okay? That's the section that talks about making a bracha. Perek Vov, 6. Halacha Yud Gimel. Easy to remember. 6:13. Right? 6:13 is an easy number to remember. He's talking about the laws of washing your hands. Okay? So when you have to wash your hands for Netilat Yadayim to make hamotzi, for example, how do you do it?
3 times.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Tell me, before you go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, what's the first thing you do?
You put it in water.
Water into what?
To the bucket.
Into a cup.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you take it from the right to the left.
Got it.
After you put it three times
Okay.
in the light.
So let's say, for example, let's say, for example, I go to the sink, I just turn on the water, and I stick my hands underneath like that.
No,
Doesn't work. You have to use a power cup.
Yeah.
And you have to pour it from the cup.
Yes.
So the Rambam writes, Hakol ksherim nitein liyadayim. Everybody is kosher to wash your hands. That means I can wash your hands, because it's from my hand washing your hand. Afilu cheresh shotev v'kotam. Even if I'm a deaf mute, even if I'm not the smartest person, even if I'm only 10 years old. Why? Because I need what's called koach gavra. A person. Physical. Now, what happens if you don't have a person around? And your hands are full, you can't juggle. So he tries to tell you can put it under your arm, you can put it, whatever. But in the end he says, if you have a monkey, you can give the cup to the monkey, and the monkey can wash your hands. V'hakuf notel liyadayim. That's what the Rambam writes. V'hakuf. And the monkey can wash your hands.
You told us this, no?
Right, last week. So the Ravid jumps in over here and he says, what are you talking about? A monkey can wash your hands. You just said you need koach gavra. A person has to wash your hands. What, are you going to start teaching cats how to wash your hands, and a dog to wash your hands, and a seal, and an elephant? What are you talking about?
Monkey.
Right? Why a monkey? That makes no sense. So the Ravid says to the Rambam. Now the Shulchan Aruch brings this down. The Shulchan Aruch says, some people say a monkey cannot wash your hands. Some people say a monkey can wash your hands, and I believe that's correct. The Ramah says we don't use a monkey to wash our hands. Stuff like that. It's in Shulchan Aruch, it brings it down. Okay. Then there's another halacha. There are different brachos we make. When you see lightning, what's the bracha? Oseh Maaseh Bereshis. When you hear thunder, what's the bracha? Kachol Gurosa Bolei Olam. You see a rainbow, there's a bracha. So if you go to the zoo, right, and you see a monkey, you see an elephant, some people say an elephant, or a monkey, what bracha do you make?
Something I don't remember.
You make a bracha. Mishaneh habrios, which means what? Translate that.
They did weird creation.
You made weird creations. Mishaneh means to change. You changed and made weird creations. Got it. Really? Is the monkey the weirdest thing in the zoo these days? There are a lot of animals that are a lot stranger than a monkey in the zoo. Okay? There are a lot of animals. So why do we make the bracha Mishaneh habriot on the monkey? So Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky asked this question. He says he wants to know what is this love of the monkey? Because we don't believe in evolution, and we don't believe we come from monkeys. So why do people like monkeys? And why do monkeys like to act like people? We have a saying, monkey see, monkey do. And there was always comparing animals, monkeys to men, always comparing. What's this love for the monkey? So Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky brings down the Gemara in Sanhedrin, Daf Kuf Tes. The Gemara says as follows: Dor Hafloga. At the end of Parshas Noach, under Nimrod's leadership, there was a group of people who decided to build a tower, a building, and they were going to climb to the top. And what were they going to do?
Destroy the ship.
Yeah, fight against Hashem.
They were going to fight
Kill
Hashem.
Hashem.
They were going to climb up to the heaven, and they were going to fight Hashem and throw Hashem out. So the Gemara says, Dor Hafloga has no chelik to Olam Haba. What do? So they say, we're going to build a tower, we're going to go up to the heavens, we're going to take hammers, we're going to beat God, and we're going to throw him out. Omer Rav Yirmiyah. Rav Yirmiyah says there were three groups of people. One said, let's go up to the heavens and we'll live there. The earth got flooded. The heavens seemed to be a safe place. So one group says, we're just going to go up there and we're going to live. No fighting. Hashem changed their language and they couldn't understand each other. Another group went up there and said, we're going to bring idols and we're going to get rid of the old God and we're going to bring new gods. Avodah Zarah, they died. They were killed. The third group says, no, we'll leave God there, but we're going to tune him up a little bit. You know what it means to tune him up a little bit? We're going to beat him up a little bit and get him to see our way of thinking. So the Gemara says, Hashem changed them into kupim, into monkeys.
One or part changed it to
This whole group, there were, let's say, 1,000 of such people.
Wow.
Hashem made them into monkeys. So Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky says something shocking. He says, you think Hashem created monkeys from the beginning of time? He says there were no monkeys on the ark.
Wow.
Monkeys never existed.
Wow.
You know what monkeys are? People that Hashem changed into monkeys after this story of the tower, of the
We have many kind of monkey.
and they all came from there. So let me finish. Therefore, he says, according to the Rambam, if a monkey was a person that was cursed, a monkey is really a person. You can wash your hands.
Wow.
You can wash your hands.
Logic.
And a lot of chromosomes the same as a human being.
He's a man.
A lot of a few of
That's right.
them different.
That's right. Number two, he says, since Hashem changed the person to the monkey, what bracha do you make? Mishaneh, abriot. You changed it. That's why we don't make it by other animals. Some people say you change it with the elephant.
Why to elephant?
Because he says some people say the elephants also were made at that time. There's an opinion.
Oh, from these people?
And he says, our theory of evolution is not that monkeys became men, it was that men became monkeys. And he says that's why monkeys act like people, because they want to go back. They're sorry for what they did. And he says that the Bava of a Rebbe once said that when kids go to the zoo and they see monkeys, they say Gescholtene Menschen, means cursed people. That means amongst Hasidim, in the Hasidic groups, they look at monkeys, they say, oh, those monkeys, they're people that were cursed. They're called cursed people. Why are they called cursed people? Because in the eyes of the kids, the monkeys were really human beings that were cursed. They were cursed because of what happened with the sin of the Dor HaFloga. So it's a very fascinating, very, very fascinating Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, who's the Rosh Hashiva of Torah V'das. He says, and this is a Gemara, by the way. The Gemara says Hashem turned them into monkeys. So now everybody says, everybody said on the Rambam, what's the Rambam talking about? We don't know. The truth is, the Rambam was right on the mark. He was brilliant. It's famous. It's a Gemara. It's not very common that the Rambam makes a mistake. I don't think it does. I don't think it exists.
How do you think if the Mashiach come
Yeah.
and the all cursing God
Takes away.
take away?
We won't have Planet of the Apes.
Maybe monkey became human.
That's correct.
Darwin.
Yes.
He said from monkey people.
That's right. And Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky says it's just the opposite.
Yeah.
Not from monkeys people, from people came monkeys.
People, которые были Normal, Saliman.
As a punishment, it was a punishment for threatening to go up to Shemayim and beat up Hashem. It's fascinating. It's Gemara Daf Kuf Tes 109.
How come only
And this
he?
Rambam is in Hilchos Brachos 6:13. You should look at it. It's fascinating.
How come only he saw this? Not everybody.
You know what? I don't know. This Gemara is in there. You open up Sanhedrin, page 109. It's right in there. It says that he turned them into kupim. It's a famous Gemara. Everybody saw it. The Rambam had a brilliance with him that, listen, the Rambam, from the Rambam Sefer came the Tur, from the Tur came the Shulchan Aruch, the evolution, if we can, it's a bad word, evolution, but the way halacha transformed itself, everybody traces it back to the Rambam, and the Rambam was a brilliant person. I mean, how did the Mishnah Berurah, how did the Chofetz Chaim write the Mishnah Berurah? You learn that Mishnah Berurah, it's 6 volumes. It's enormous. It could take a person 10 lifetimes to write it. He wrote it in 1 lifetime. Now, he lived in Radin. There wasn't many distractions. He didn't have television, he didn't have movies,
Which one you said in Gemara? This page
San-
109 and what?
Page 109,
Sanhedrin.
Sanhedrin. Do you have an art scroll Gemara here?
Here?
In
I
the-
don't know. Gemara is?
If you check,
Art school.
I'll
English.
show it to you, because you can read the English. You'll see where it's
I
right
could
in
see
there.
in my shul tomorrow.
Right, page 109. And the Rambam is in Hilchos Brachos, right at the very beginning, chapter 6, halacha 13, where he says, everybody's kosher to wash your hands, even monkeys. Like, whoa.
I heard it, this show. I don't know if you told us last week.
I told you last week that we were going to talk about this.
Yeah.
Rabbi Gladstein was the one who spoke about this in one of his shiurim. Not all of this is mine, although some of the things he said this week I already had written years ago. So next week I'm going to share with you other stuff on Avram. This old stuff, I even said it here already a few times. So anyway, let's go a little bit further. Okay? Noach is in the Teva. The floods is raging. Now the flood took almost a full year. From when the floods began, and the rain, and then till the water subsided, they were in the Teva, they were in the ark almost a full year. Now, I once told you, last year I told you that when they came out of the ark, when they came out of the Teva, it says that they were very sick. They were sick because they had been cooped up in this box for a full year, breathing in all the food and the animals, etc. So the Midrash says that Shem went to Gan Eden to get a certain book that Adam HaRishon had written called the Sefer HaRefuos, a book of cures. And I told you that he had brought the book back to cure them from their illnesses, and that book was handed down from generation to generation until the days of Chizkiyahu HaMelech, who put it away. According to some opinions, Shem, when he was in Gan Eden, took a bite out of the tree of life, the Eitz HaChaim. And Shem lived hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years. The Medrash seems to imply that he lived until the days of Shlomo HaMelech. And he came to Shlomo HaMelech, he says, please, I want to die already, I'm tired of living. And Shlomo HaMelech davened that he should die. And he died during the days of Shlomo HaMelech. Different Midrashim about the tree of life that we spoke about over the years. There was a famous city, Luz, no one died. They say that they had a water that was a stream that went under the tree of life, so it had sucked in some of the flavor of the roots, so when people drank that water, they lived forever. Where is that city? Nobody knows. But even in mythical American folklore, there was the Fountain of Youth in Florida, Shangri-La, where people live forever. There are all these different things.
What means shame?
Shem is the son of Noach. What does it mean? Name, Hashem. Now it says, after 40 days, Noach opened up the window, and he sent out the raven. It doesn't say why he sent out the raven, it just says he sent him out. And the raven just flew around, and then it says he sent out the dove to see if the water disappeared. But by the raven, it doesn't say that. So they say, the Meforshim say, why did he send out the raven? He was angry at the raven.
The medicine.
The raven violated the rules of the ark.
Dog, raven,
And Cham, right? So Cham turned black. Raven was black already. The dog got a leash that would
Yeah,
always
to kill him,
be tied
Control,
to that.
control, yeah.
Control.
Control, его держит, no? На крючке держит. Да.
So they say that Noach sent out the raven because he violated the rules. Of course, the raven then turns to Noach and says to him, "You hate me, and your master," means Hashem, "hates me. You hate me because you sent me out. If something happens to me, what will happen for the future? All the ravens will be lost. There's only two of us. And Hashem hates me because he made me a treif bird, a not kosher bird." Now they say the raven is a very cruel bird. They say that when the raven has children, the children are white. So the raven doesn't think they're his children, so they don't feed them. And the children then have to eat flies and survive until they turn black, and then the raven says, "Oh yeah, you must be my children." But when the children are born, they don't do a DNA test, he says, "You're not my children." So the raven is a very cruel bird. So the Gemara says, "Tshuva nitzchis." The raven gave a very good answer to Noah. "Why'd you send me out? You had no right." So he brings down the Oznaim LaTorah that Noach said to the raven, he says, "Come on, let's get real. For the last 12 months, all of you lived in the ark. How is that possible? The lion didn't devour the sheep or the goat. How did everybody live? Because Hashem protected you. No one died. We all have pets. Do your pets live forever? No, they die. In 12 months in the ark, no pet died, no bird died, no animal died. How is that possible? Because Hashem protected you. So I sent you out because you were bad. What are you afraid? You're going to get killed out there? The same God that protects you in here will protect you out there. Leave me alone. Don't bother me." So Noah wasn't too impressed by the raven. The Netziv, I told you this last year, the Netziv gives a totally strange, different answer. The Netziv says that Noah was an aristocratic person, and in those days, fancy people had pets. And he liked birds, so he had a pet raven, and he had a pet dove. Those were his pets. People today have parrots and parakeets. Those were his pets. So when he came into the ark, he brought his pets with him. To many people, a pet is part of the family. So when he sent out the raven, it wasn't a set that Hashem gave him. It was his own personal pet. He could do whatever he wants with his pet. And when he sent out the dove, it was his own personal dove. He could do whatever he wants with his dove. They were his pets. That's what the Netziv says. The Medrash says that the dove went to Gan Eden and brought an olive branch to show peace. Today, the olive branch is part of the United Nations symbol, whatever that means. Then eventually they say the dove took the crown of Mashiach and showed it to Noah. And the olives is when they always used to anoint a Kohen or the Melech or Mashiach was with oil. And the dove was saying to Noah, you have the possibility to bring Mashiach. The crown is there. The oil is ready. But Noah didn't take the hint. He didn't do it. So there are different midrashim about what the dove did and what the raven did. Now, the raven, Noach says, "Go, look." The raven says, No, I'm not going anywhere. Hashem told you to go into the teva. You can only leave the boat when Hashem tells you you can go. You understand that. There are certain rules of etiquette. Moshe Rabbeinu, Hashem says to Moshe, "Go down to Egypt and bring out the Jews." Moshe says, "Great, no problem. I'm just going to go and tell Yisro I'm going." Hashem said, "What? Tell Yisro? I'm telling you to go down to Egypt. You got to go tell your father-in-law?" He says, "My father-in-law has been good to me. When I was homeless, he took me in. He fed me, he clothed me, he was nice to me. I married his daughter. I can't go without his permission. I got to say goodbye." Really? Yeah, that's called derech eretz. Even though Hashem said, "Go down to Egypt," and Moshe could have said, "That's it, I'm going, I'm not stopping off at home," he went back home anyway. Derech eretz. So the raven said to Noach, "You can't leave this boat till Hashem says for you to go. So what do you want from me? You want me to fly around and tell you what? Everything is good, everything is dry? What difference does it make? You can't leave anyway." Noach said to the raven, he says, "You're wrong. Even though Hashem gives instructions, a Talmud Chacham tells you to do something, you do it. What happens if a Talmud Chacham, the rabbi, tells you to do something, and you think he's wrong according to halacha? You think that's not what Hashem wants you to do, but he's the rabbi. Who do you listen to? What you think is right, or what the rabbi says? What the rabbi says. It could be against the Torah. That could be. That's a different discussion. But for today, you do what the rabbi says. So the raven says, I'm not listening to you. You gotta listen to what Hashem says. And Noach says, no, I can make decisions also. So they had this whole debate. At any rate, the Maharal says that the raven finally said to Noach, you can't send me on a mission. I have a different mission. I have a job in the future. Hashem is giving me a different job. And my job is not to help you. I have a different job. What was his job? What was the raven's job? So the answer is that if you know Navi, in the book of Melachim Aleph, the book of Kings, there's a story as follows. Yehoshua destroyed the city of Yericho. What day of the week did Yehoshua destroy the city of Yericho, by the way? Just curious, you know when the walls came tumbling down?
Yeah, because it's screaming.
It was Shabbat. It was on Shabbat. And because it was on Shabbat, he said the city is cherem, nobody can build the city. Whoever builds the city of Yericho, I'm cursed that person. That when he lays the foundation, he'll bury his oldest son. And by the time he puts up the doors, his youngest son will be dead. And for hundreds of years, 1,000 years, nobody built the city of Yericho. Comes this guy Chiel, he's a contractor, he's looking for a foreclosure, a real good deal, and somebody says, Yericho, you can buy it cheap, $1, buy the whole city. So he starts building Yericho, he lays the foundation, who drops dead? His oldest son. By the time he finishes, all his children are dead.
Wow.
So Achov, the king, and Eliyahu go to his house to be Menachem Ovo. And they meet, Achov and Eliyahu. So Achov says to Eliyahu, he says, you know, God is a very strange God. He says, how so? He says, look at me. I worship idols. I murder people. I sleep with anybody I want to sleep with. And what happens to me? Nothing. This guy goes, builds a city that nobody ever heard about, that was destroyed 1,000 years ago because Yehoshua gave it a curse, and his whole family's wiped out. Well, that makes sense to you. I'm a murderer, and I'm doing great. He's a contractor, and his whole family's wiped out. So Eliyahu said to Achav, he said, you know, you're right. It's really not right. Maybe we need to start doing something against you. I now promise you there's going to be no rain until you do teshuvah, until Hashem changes, until I say so. And for the next 3 years, there was no rain. And all of Israel was starving, famine.
Wow.
Now, how did Eliyahu HaNavi eat? He had a small stream next to a cave, which he had. And Hashem ordered the ravens to bring him food. Now, that's bizarre. Where did the ravens get the food? From Achov's table. So now let's get this straight. Here we have a guy who says openly, I don't keep Shabbos, I don't keep Yom Tov, I murder people, I kill people. Oh, my food? That's 100% kosher. You can eat my food. And the raven, who eats any meat, he's bringing the food and Eliyahu is eating it. Okay? How much, if a raven came and dropped a piece of meat on your plate, would you eat it? No. Would it get the OU or the Star K or the Chof K? The Vada Rabbanim of Queens, I don't even think the chief rabbi this week would do it. I don't know who the chief rabbi is this week. But whoever the chief rabbi is this week, I don't think he would even say it's kosher. You know, a raven brings you a piece of meat, it could have come from anywhere. And if it came from Achov's table, his wife Izebel kept kosher. She used to worship idols, Baal, you know, she would keep kosher. So it's very bizarre. I mean, it must be that people worshipped idols and still kept kosher. I don't understand it, but that's what it is. Okay.
At that time, there was no kosher.
There had to be kosher. I mean, Eliyahu HaNavi was a Navi. At any rate, so the raven, that was his job. He was designated. Now, what was the lesson? You have to understand the lesson. Eventually, Achov puts out a contract for Eliyahu. And he says, whoever finds Eliyahu, I'll pay him thousands of dollars. Dead or alive, makes no difference. And people tried to get Eliyahu, and they weren't successful. They got close, they got burnt, they died. Eventually, Eliyahu decides he's going to give rain after there's a whole showdown on Har HaKarmel. 2 goats, 2 mizbeachs, prepare it, no fire. Whoever God sends down the fire is the real God. Now,
What means eventually?
eventually means in time, after 3 years. Of course, you can ask the question, hold on here, bring a korban? There's a Beis HaMikdash. You can't bring a korban in Haifa, and Har HaKarmel. That's called shchutei chutz, sacrificing outside the Beis HaMikdash. It's against the Torah. Eliyahu Hanavi says, I'm making an exception. Who gave him the authority? He did. He's the Gadol Hador. He's a Navi Hashem. So the ravens learned a lesson that day, that if Eliyahu Hanavi says something, even though God says no, it happens. Even though God sent ravens that are cruel, as if to say to Eliyahu, I know you're angry at Achab, but it's a cruel thing to do, but I'll do it anyway. Here are the keys, Eliyahu, to the rain, because you are Eliyahu. So Chachamim have the power to say to Hashem, I know that you don't agree with this, but this is what we want to do, and Hashem will agree to it. Moshe hit the rock. Hashem said, speak to the rock. But the water came anyway. Moshe was punished, but the water came. So the ravens learned the lesson that day that a Navi can do whatever he wants. And eventually, of course, everybody saw that Eliyahu was right, and Achab was wrong, and for a while, everybody did teshuvah, and it was really good for a while. Then things got just as bad as they were before. Izebel tried to kill Eliyahu again. Eliyahu runs for his life. And finally, Eliyahu says to Hashem, you know what? I've had enough. I'm ready to die. And Hashem says, well, not so fast. He says, well, I want to go. So he gives him some missions, prepare Elisha. And eventually there's a chariot that comes down and grabs Eliyahu. And Eliyahu goes up to Shamayim. And Eliyahu disappears. And there's a whole question in Halacha, could Eliyahu's wife get remarried? Because no one ever saw him die. There was no body. So the Gemara says, the Halacha says she was allowed to get remarried. Because you can only be married to a man. You can't be married to an angel. Eliyahu became an angel, so you can't be married to an angel. So once he went up to Shamayim, that's when the marriage was off. And because Eliyahu said that the Jewish people don't follow the Torah, Hashem says, okay, you're going to have to watch at the Brit Milah how even Reformed Jews keep the Torah. Because Brit Milah is one of the few mitzvahs that even Jews who are mixed married seem to keep. Everybody seems to keep circumcision. So even though Eliyahu Hanavi said that I'm not going to keep that, he was able. He kept that mitzvah. He had to do that for that reasons. Okay. So we have a little bit over there. It's already almost time to go. One or two last thoughts that I shared in the past, but I want to share it with you again anyway. Just from last week. After Adam and Chava sinned, what was the punishment? Hashem said to Adam, the earth is going to be cursed, right? By the sweat of your brow, when you plant, what's going to grow? Thorns, thistles. Nothing's going to grow, right? Nothing's going to grow. So now, if you were a father and you had children, and Hashem just made it very clear to you that the ground is cursed, would you send your child to be a farmer? No. No, not a good job. And Hevel said, I'm going to be a shepherd. Why? I have milk, cheese, I can use the skin for clothing, I have wool. It was a good profession. What did Cain become? Cain became a farmer. So, why? The earth was cursed. Then, after Cain kills Hevel, Hashem says to Cain, that's it. I cursed the ground that opened up to swallow your brother's blood. Ki sa'avodes ha'adama, when you work the ground, it's not going to produce for you. If I was Cain, you know what I would say? What? We've had that curse already. Well, this is repeat? You know? Well, that's what you said to my father. Big deal. It doesn't make any sense. So Reb Shamshon Raphael Hirsch, Rabbi Hirsch, has a fascinating answer. He says that first day, Hashem created Adam, let's say in the 5th hour, or the 6th hour. So in the 5th hour, he created him. In the 6th hour, Adam looked for a mate and didn't find the mate. In the 7th hour, he had Chava. In the 8th hour, they had a child, Cain. In the 9th hour, they sinned. In the 10th hour, Hashem judged them. In the 11th hour, they were sent out of Gan Eden. And in the 12th hour, they had Hevel. So it comes out that Cain was born before the sin. So if Cain was born before they sinned, and he didn't sin, now, is Cain going to die? No, Cain will live forever. And is the earth cursed for Cain?
No.
Not at all. So Cain became a farmer, and he produced beautifully. It was only after he killed Hevel that he became mortal. You kill, you die. And now I curse the earth for you also. So Rav Shashon Raphael Hirsch is of the opinion that since Cain was born before the Chet, and Hevel was born after, Cain became a farmer, Hevel did not. So that makes perfect sense. Then we ask the question, we'll end with this, because I have people coming. There were other people who built boats. All those boats drowned. But there's a story that Og was holding on to the outside of the table. And he survived. Why did he survive?
Sure.
If he was a good guy, he should have been inside the table, nice and dry.
Yeah.
If he was a bad guy, Hashem should have blown him off and thrown him into the water, and he would have died like everybody else. How could he hold on and survive when Hashem said everybody was going to die?
Tshuva.
He didn't do tshuva, Og.
No?
No.
So that word Shua.
So the answer is that we have something called bechira, free will. There's always got to be a balance. If everybody who died, and everybody who was supposed to save, no one would ever do an Aveira because they would think God controls the world. By Og holding on, he sent a message. You know what? God can say one thing, he can get around God. Hashem creates these opportunities for people to think that, just to see whether you believe in Hashem or you believe that you can trick him. So Og survived, so the world should always have bechira. Remember, the world always has a balance. There are a lot of things that happen in the world that don't make sense. And by right, Hashem should have destroyed that, but it doesn't. Gives you the impression there's no God. That's exactly the impression he wants you to have. So this way, if you believe in God, you get a reward for it. Because it's so easy not to believe in Hashem. Hashem has to keep that balance. And that's why Og survived. Have a good night, everybody. To be continued.